Well, while you were still there was a guy in the hospital who you called Harold the Pervert.
Yeah. Well,
Tell me
Dolores
about what
warned me
happened.
about him. As I was getting older, 11, 12 years old, I was a very good-looking kid as a young guy, and she warned me that Harold may attack you. That's what are you talking about, attack? Because you're not, my children are so privy to so many things, but we never knew about sex at 11, 12 years of age, and pedophile, I didn't know what the word meant, but he was, and I was always wondering because the only basically privacy we had were the drapes hung from the ceiling around our bed, and when he was giving physical therapy to some of the kids in the ward, he'd close that drape, and these kids would be moaning. I didn't know what he was doing. Now I know, and I knew after that. And sure enough, he came one night. But I have a tremendous instinct, and I'm the kind of guy that, I smell smoke and I leave the building and the building catches on fire. But there was a porter's broom leaning against the wall where the rails were. So I had the strength of my right arm, and I was building my left arm. So I don't know, it was blocking my way, and I just stuck it under my left arm, under the shoulder, and went into the bathroom. So I had a stall number 4, which was like, I was in no hurry to go back to bed. So when I got out of bed, I couldn't use the urinal. I had to sit down because I had no strength in my left side. So I would sit there, and I broke the broom sort of the handle off and discarded it. And then I was using the broom handle, and I sharpened it in the grout of the tile on the floor. So I had this spear-type weapon about 3, 4 feet. And I always put it behind the radiator in that stall. The radiators were hung on the wall, and nobody found it. So when I got there, I always took it and laid it on the floor. And sure enough, Harold Garner came one night, and he was pulling on the curtain, trying to get in. I said, "I'll be right out." And I saw his shoes facing me, and the next thing you know, he just opened the drape and closed it behind him, and he unbuttoned his pants, and he's trying to convince me his penis is a Tootsie Roll. And fortunately, the strength I had, and he was more paying attention of trying to put himself in my mouth. He didn't see me grab the broom. And with my left hand, I just guided it, and at the angle I was in, and the strength I had in my right hand for 5 years was insane. So I drove it under his rib cage and went right out his back. And he's spraying the bathroom walls and floor as he bled out. And then Dolores came and threw a blanket on me, and they put me up in the psych ward for 72 hours because the state didn't want nobody to know about anything like that. But anyway, I got out. That's how I got out of the hospital.
You killed this child molester, and the hospital covered it up because they didn't want the news to get out that he was molesting all the other kids in the hospital?
Is that wild? Yeah.
Wow.
And then I had Dolores because she couldn't release me on my own at 12. So she came to me. She said, "We have to call your parents to come and get you." I said, "Don't call my parents. Just take me downstairs." Like they were coming to pick me up. And I said, "Lend me $2 and I'll take a cab down to the neighborhood." It was some 30th. And I said, "I'll give you the money back." She said, "I ain't worried about the money." And she did that. So I went down to the neighborhood, and I got off of Mott and Grand, which I was just there Sunday again. Everybody's still there. Ferraris is still there. All those places still exist. And I went to my grandfather's friend, Funzi Magnati, who had a bakery. And everybody knew about what happened because the 72 hours, word spread like that kid, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. He killed a pedophile in the hospital, which was good for me to have that reputation going back to the neighborhood. And I used it well. And that was it.
Well, I mean, it was clearly self-defense.
Right.
But
Exactly.
how did you feel taking a man's life at that age?
It didn't bother me at all knowing what he was doing to these other kids. I felt, I took out a guy that, I have no problem killing somebody if they're evil. And in fact, I had this conversation with Pope John Paul. I got very close to him, and he knew all about my life. And he says, "How do you justify killing people. I said, well, I feel I'm doing God's work. And he was taken back by that. I said, well, reading the Bible, I think I'm a disciple to get rid of these people. I don't kill any good people. The people I got involved with are really bad people. And that I never had a problem with it. I just, I think my want to survive and get out of there is just justified anything to me.
Okay, so now you're out of the hospital and you're back in your neighborhood and you become, I guess, an errand boy for Frank Costello?
Yeah, that happened.
Ooh.
I was staying in the neighborhood and I was making bread at night, mixing 50-pound bags of flour by hand, which, unbeknownst to me, was like going to a gym because it's like dynamic tension. Then we'd wait for it to raise. We'd cut it into quarter-pound loaves and then do a totally different exercise and eating it. And then I'd go sleep in the storeroom. That's where I lived. And again, having all that flour, that's why I have nothing wrong with my mobility now. Normally I would have rheumatism, all kinds of arthritis by this time. My whole left side would be locked up. But I got out, and I always walked. I still walk 3 to 5 miles every other day. I walked to the studio today from 61st Street. But I do that yet. And with that, one day my grandfather took me to Delancey Street to take a walk with him after work. And he used to go to this place, Leo Rabinowitz, who had a stationery store, and he'd buy pads and pencils for his club. And Leo Rabinowitz, when he got there, was so excited, he just got these ballpoint pens that you didn't need ink anymore. And it had his own cartridge. And he was trying to sell my grandfather the pens. And he said, just give me my pencils. But I remembered that. And I went back the next day. And I said, I got an idea. He said, what's your idea? And he had a heavy Russian accent. I said, well, if you give, I give nothing to nobody. I said, let me rephrase that. Lend me 50 pence. I don't lend. I said, can I tell you the story? I'm going to take your business to Wall Street, all the banking exchanges. You're here. You got a 10-foot front on Delancey Street. I'll go and I'll sell them. The next day, as many as I sold, you replenish them and I'll pay you for them. I said, you know where my grandfather is. You know his club. If I don't show up, go get the money from him. I said, my grandfather told me, look a man in the eye, shake his hand, your word is your bond. He said, well, your grandfather's a smart man. I'll give you one day. And I did it. So I exhausted the whole area. It got to be when I'd walk in, and that's when people were getting paid with cash. They were getting checks. They were getting envelopes with money in it. So I staggered where I went to the hours after they got paid. But there was a while when I show up, they wouldn't even say anything. But they opened the door, and I had more pens than I did. And then I took the train uptown.